everybody. Welcome to Monday Morning Call with Paul. Super excited about our guest today, Micah. Um, those of
What's up,
you,
Paul?
how you doing, man?
Good.
So
How are
those
you?
of you who don't know Micah, this guy is always in Discord helping people for underwriting questions. He's like the underwriting guru. Him and just a couple others. There's not too many gurus I would call. Even I myself will call Micah, and he can attest to this every once in a while if I get stuck. Um, man, glad to have you here this morning, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course, man. So, um, kind of really was excited about bringing on. We had Micah on before with another person, but Micah's vast knowledge. You mean he deserves like his own 2 3 hour show podcast, right? um and so I just kind of wanted to walk through with people, just what your typical days like, what does that entail. One of the things I respect you most about is the hustle that you have, and you're always banging the phones, you're always doing some kind of income producing activity. So I really wanted to just kind of pick apart your day. Like, what is it like when you wake up? How do you start your day? What happens throughout your day?
That's a good question. I'm going to answer this in two parts. Okay.
Two parts.
And the first part is going to be how my schedule was. And the second part is going to be how my schedule is. And I think that they're both very useful viewpoints depending on whether you're a new agent or a more seasoned agent.
So are you saying how you planned out your schedule and what it ended up being?
No, no, no. How my schedule was for the first couple years of the business, and then how
Oh,
I
and how
find my
it's
schedule
changed.
today. Yes.
Okay. Sounds good.
So in the first couple years of the business, my schedule was very traditional. Okay. Um, my schedule was pretty much dial my ass off Monday from like 9 to 7, basically,
Okay.
um, and book up for Tuesday, Wednesday appointments. And I
Eight
was running
appointments each day.
100% in the home. What was that?
Right. Eight appointments each day for Tuesday, Wednesday,
That
eight.
was the goal, but more often than not, it ended up being like 4 to 5 a day. That also dealt with my lead flow, but we'll get to that later.
Got it.
Um, and then it was a repeat Thursday, whole day of dials for Saturday, Friday. I did that for a solid 2 years, and that definitely helped me build momentum, build discipline, and just follow a routine. Um, I didn't have any CRM. I just had a list of leads and a phone, and I called people who requested me to call.
Yeah.
And both of those years, I sold about 280, 290,000.
Just to give everybody a premise, right? Back, there's a lot of people here who never been in home and sold in home. So just to kind of give people an idea, you guys, back when we used to sell in home, Mondays and Thursdays were what we call booking days, and then also business days. Like if you had to fix, something with the policy, that was the time that you had to call the carriers, get that done. But most of us was in a big room full of agents just dialing, right? You'd be right
Yeah,
next to somebody else.
yeah.
And if I remember correctly, people were scared to dial next to somebody because then the other person could hear them on the line. We'd tell people, who cares? Right. And so you would
Call
just,
centers don't care.
yeah. So you just have to get used to it. And that was one of the hurdles people had when they were brand new to the business, was having to get over that somebody sitting right next to them booking. And we used to go by dials, right? How many dials did you make a day? And that would give us a barometer of, how many appointments that we'd book, because those directly correlate, right? You can tell by the leads that you're running, if you're keeping track of it, how many dials you're going to have to make in order to get 8 appointments or 10 appointments, whatever your goal is.
And that benchmark, at least for me, was around 200 to 300 dials a day, depending
Yeah,
on the
mine
lead.
was mine was pretty much 250, 250
Yeah,
to three. Yep.
depending on what sort of leads we're working. But in any case, um, so that's how I ran things for a while. And I think that for a new agent or for an agent that has not built a solid book of business with, 1,000+ clients, that's how you should run your life.
Mhm.
If you're traditionally buying leads and making calls, I know not everybody does that, but in the event that you are, I would definitely look at your schedule, figure out how much time you can devote, pick particular days to dial, and dial very intently, outbound, leave messages, voicemails, CRMs, whatever it is that you do, hire a dialer to help you through some of it, and just hustle, because it's extraordinarily important to build that grit, and it teaches you a lot.
Before you move on a
Um,
little bit further, let's, if I can, maybe capitalize
sure.
on a little more. Why not just depend on the technology we have now as a CRM or even hiring a booker and let them do all the booking for you? Why not?
Well, for two reasons, in my opinion, and I know different people have different views on this, but you're going to be the agent closing that sale and talking to that client 9 times out of 10, unless you send them an ethos link and they happen to fill it out without. Okay.
Mhm.
That constitutes a professional relationship, agent and client. And I am of the opinion that it is much better to nurture that relationship from start to finish. And start doesn't mean we're in the appointment. It means I'm making contact with you on the phone,
Right.
as far as I'm concerned. Now, again, different people do it differently, and that's fine. What I can say from my experience is that it helps to connect a little bit personally, on the phone, make a little joke, make them laugh, share a little bit of my personality, get a solid booking, screen them properly,
Hmm.
make sure
Hmm.
they know what it's about, and then that opens the door to a more successful appointment, in my experience.
Got it.
Um, Sometimes you come across a limit as to how much you can do personally, and that's why hiring a dialer can be very effective. And so you kind of just pick up where you left off, right at the beginning of that appointment. But I personally think it's good to master that before you start hiring someone else, because you're going to need to teach and train, right?
Right.
So that's a little bit about how my schedule was for the first couple of years. Last year and this year, with the shift to virtual, my schedule has definitely changed. Um, and instead of a dial goal, my goal now is pretty much a sale goal per day. Okay. I'll joke with my team, a sale a day keeps the bills away, but I actually think it's quite true. So the question becomes, what do I need to do to get a sale a day? Okay. I'm taking some more inbound calls. I have a little bit of a bigger book of business. I have clients calling me. I'm doing more annual reviews. I have kind of reached the point where I don't to get the same results, I don't need to make as much outbound effort all the time, if that makes sense, right? When you start having more clients, more people calling you, annual reviews for your policies, you're just going to have more clientele to meet with, and you can mine those for referrals a little bit more easily over time. So my schedule these days is very dynamic, and it's not fixed. But what I can tell you is that I'm usually always on by 8:30 to 9, and I usually finish up by 6:30 to 8, depending on the appointments. I certainly will still dial. I certainly will still run in homes, but I am a lot more virtual, and with that comes the ability to work different time zones. So sometimes I'll stay up later and run a 9 p.m. or a 10 p.m. appointment. Sometimes I'll start a little later, right? But I think that that's something that you have to build over time and make sure you're always hitting your non-negotiables in terms of your numbers, your profits, and your policies per day and per month.
Let's tap into non-negotiables. What does that mean, and what are your non-negotiables?
It means something that I'm going to take a step back here. How many of you have ever worked a W-2 regular job before? Okay.
Throw a one in the chat.
Right. And most people have, right? As part of those jobs, you have things that you have to do to keep the job, right?
Yeah, a minimum.
You have
Yeah.
to show up on time,
Hmm.
right? If you have customer service, right, you have to follow a certain script on the phone. If you're in manufacturing, you have to get a certain number of parts done per day.
Yeah.
If you're in teaching, right, there's a code of ethics that you have to follow when interacting with kids. So we all know what non-negotiables are, and we're used to building them in very easily to a standard job. Okay. I think when we come into this position, it's very easy for us to feel like, oh, well, I'm my own, whatever I want. And yeah, you can, but that doesn't mean that you don't have non negotiables. It means that you commit to doing something every single day or every other couple days regularly, right? Throughout the
So
week and month.
so basically, if this is your own business, why wouldn't you set it up like a business, right? You have certain
Like a
parameters you
job
have to
for
meet.
yourself, even.
Exactly, right? Yeah. Because if you were running those businesses, you were working for a W-2, you'd have a minimum requirement for everybody. So now that you own your own business, why wouldn't you have a minimum requirement on yourself and any agents that you bring on?
Correct, exactly.
Makes sense.
Um, and so I think you just have to accept that structure for yourself and just go with it. Because otherwise you're going to be fighting yourself and it's not fun, you know?
No. Yeah.
Um, so what does that mean, right? Like, how do you set non-negotiables if you feel like you don't have traction to work with? I think that's important. Um, and the answer is always you have to start somewhere, right? Whether that's help from your upline. Like there are even people at other teams and agencies that I work with who like do things for me and I cut them splits, right? Like
Right.
where there's a will, there's a way, right? I could probably, and I'm not suggesting people do this, but Paul and I have a good relationship, or you have a good relationship with other agent A. You can go to them and say, hey, when's the last time you did an annual review for your policyholders? If I were to schedule some annual reviews for you, get some practice dialing, and you close some policies, would you be willing to give me a little something? Negotiate with people.
Absolutely.
I know that I've certainly had to do that over time. So what I can say is just do your best to find a will, first of all, and when you have that will, you'll find a way.
So I want to go back to our days in the field, right? Because I think that really taught a lot of us about discipline. Because I'm just going to be honest, it was a lot harder, I think, than it is virtually, right? And what I mean by that is you had to get up, get out of bed, leave the house. You were gone all day, and that's if there was no shows. You're banging doors. You're doing whatever it took to get that sale, right? So, um, without giving too much away, kind of talk about what your day was like back then. Like, what did you do step by step?
Oh yeah. So I would usually book, 4 to 6 appointments a day. I'd map them out, make sure I was driving in an efficient manner,
Right.
right?
What app do you use?
Um, Road Warrior.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Um, I would have backup leads in my car on my computer. So if I, had somebody no show me, I could go ahead and, make some extra dials. I could door knock. Even last year, I've made, in the last year, I've made a couple sales off of just door knocking leads. I don't do it a ton anymore, but it's fun
Yeah.
sometimes to just know that you still have that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so, you go to your appointments. I used to have a little badge, but then I got rid of it because I felt like it was tacky.
Yeah.
But you go in there, you go with confidence, you get to meet people, you see their homes, you see their families, you talk to them, you make a
Yeah.
good impression, you ask some good questions, you discover the why and the need, and then you help that family.
Yeah.
And that's what it's about. It's that service. It's about not thinking, oh well, I've got to make a sale, me. It's like,
Yeah.
no, let me
Yeah.
help. 9 times out of 10, you're going to be able to help a family if you apply yourself.
100%. Yeah.
And you ask good questions and you care and you figure out what they have, when they got it, what it really is, and even then, you have to monitor those cases over time because the people that we speak with a lot of the times are shoppers. And if they're going to replace a policy and get a better one with you, there's a chance they could do that down the road for something they think is better, even though it's not. So you have to stay on top of that.
Right.
But that's the art of running clientele.
So kind of diving in deeper, let's say you had, so me, I back then I had 8 appointments a day. If I didn't have 8 appointments and I knew I wasn't doing my job, that was my quota, right? And so that's 16 appointments over 2 days. So those 250 dials, 300 dials had to get me at least 16 appointments. Now, most of the time, a lot of those appointments were also from the week before. So let's say on Monday, I dialed 300 and I only got 12 appointments, right? When I was in the field and let's say somebody I knocked on and they wasn't there, I was picking up the phone in the car dialing to get my 16 appointments. And
Absolutely.
even on Thursday and Friday, I mean, sorry, Wednesday, Tuesday and Wednesday, even if I had my 16 appointments, I was dialing for Thursday's phone calls that were going to be for Friday and Saturday sits so I could get ahead instead of getting behind. What I see a lot of people do in this business is they wait till the last minute and then they're trying to play catch up instead of doing things now that would then help them in the future as far as booking appointments goes, right? But it's
Absolutely.
that kind of mentality. The other thing we used to do is if I didn't get a sale, and let's say your schedule is by 6 o'clock and you didn't get your sale, are you going to continue to dial or bang out another hour or two to try to get what you didn't get for that day's goal?
Sometimes, yes. And that would really depend on what else I had going on, right? Did I
Right.
feel like I needed to debrief my appointments? Did I feel like I needed to put in that extra work? Was I behind? What did my day look like the next day, right? Yes, I can recall doing that a number of times. I wouldn't say I did it every time, but certainly many, many times to make sure that you're always stacking the deck in your favor. That's for sure.
It kind of comes down to, I think, if you feel like, and if you really did a good job that day or not, right? You really put in a full effort that you could go to bed knowing that, hey, I did, just about everything I could today, right?
Mhm.
And so you still go to bed, a little bit unsatisfied, but satisfied because you put in work versus that guiltiness, that guilt conscious you get if you were busy scrolling or you didn't really put a full effort in, and then you're hurting later, and you're wondering like,
Right.
damn, I should have
Well,
did it.
and I can point to that in myself too sometimes. I mean, there were times in the field where I got no showed and I was like, I'm gonna go grab a coffee and just chill, you know?
Yeah,
And we all do that. We all do that virtually.
100%.
Oh, my appointment no showed. I'm gonna go on TikTok. Okay, cool. Is that gonna really benefit you? Or like
Yeah,
should you do something like productive to make money? Um, and again, we all need our little breaths and our little relaxation, but schedule that outside of working hours and income producing activities so that you can actually focus. Again, if you're on a job, right? Like if somebody asks you to go grab a coffee at a normal job at 10 a.m. in the morning, you're like, hey, nah, like I'm at work. But for some reason here, we're like, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. We'll go do that.
right.
Which again, I'm not saying you always have to be rigid. Sometimes you meet a new recruit or you meet a client. There's some flexibility, but you always have to structure your day based off the idea of, okay, I have a non-negotiable to hit for the day, for the week, for the month. And if I hit that, cool, and maybe I give myself a little leeway. If I don't hit that, I need to tighten things up.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say about
What would you say separates people here from being successful versus not being successful?
it. There's so many. Um, I'm gonna take an answer from Tony Robbins, who's a success coach, which I think is very applicable here. Um, he breaks down success into three components. They all start with S. The first one is your story. And I think that's very important to get right. In other words, why are you here? Why are you in this position? Why are you with this team? Is your and that's going to drive you, right? And provide a strong why. Next thing is daily state, right? Your physiological, mental, and emotional states. How are you doing to work out, to nurture your mind, to build your knowledge base, to increase your skills, right? to put yourself in a state of mind and being where you can optimally respond to clients, make phone calls, call carriers, handle rejection, do what you need to do. And then the final piece of that third part is S for strategy. Are you making? Are you using a dialer? Are you using text messages? How much work are you putting in? What are your numbers, right? And I think if you really hone in on those three things, that can make you stand out in the competition in a very, very powerful way.
So it kind of just comes down to, how bad do you want it?
And what are you willing to give up for it?
100%. Yeah. So for those people that are contemplating whether this is for them or not, um, what advice would you give them?
Find someone else who's doing it at a level that you want to and talk to them about what their life was like before and after getting into the business, because that's a case study for you, right? Um, I know for myself, despite the challenges I've had, it's still something that checks all the boxes for me in a way that no other position or job does, right?
Right.
And I think that that's true for many, many people. I think it comes down to being realistic with yourself too, and asking yourself, hey, like a lot of us like to think of ourselves as self-employed or business owners, but we don't really act like it. And I think it
Right.
comes down to an honest conversation of, hey, like, is this really the best use of my time? Like, do I feel good knowing that my income is not guaranteed? Like, that's a big thing to wrestle with.
100%. Yeah.
And I know that I wrestle with that sometimes. It's like, okay, if I take the foot off the gas, am I okay for a little while? Or am I not okay? And how do I
Yeah.
respond to that? And again, that comes down to your mindset and your story. And I think that if you are not someone who can handle that,
I
you
think
might want
that's
to look in the mirror and reflect a little bit about where you are.
I think that's the pink elephant in the room, right? Like,
You know,
do you really want to put in the hustle that it takes in order to be successful in a position of owning your own business versus I could just go clock in on time every day,
right,
right? Yeah. I mean, that's to me always the elephant in the room we never talk about really,
right,
right? And I think for each individual, that's a tough question. Like, do I really want to put in that kind of work? Like, I know I want to have a lot of money, but do I really want to put in the work to get there?
right,
Right. And I think a lot of people are afraid, to say yes or no to that, right? For
right,
different reasons, right? If I say yes, but damn, this is a lot of work. This is stressful. If I say no, am I really that person that just wants to, you know, enjoy mediocrity instead of really pushing like I say and I
right.
think I want, right? Because it's
And,
not
and listen,
mediocrity
if
we want.
that's
Everybody wants the
right,
big paychecks, right?
right. But you got to be realistic with yourself too. And sometimes, again, like I used to think to myself, oh, well, I want to make everybody love this industry because I love
Right.
it, right? Um, but I've had to come to accept the fact that not everybody's built for it, and that's perfectly okay. Not everybody's going to
Absolutely.
be a data scientist. Not everybody's going to be a social worker. Not everybody's going to be an astronaut. Some people's personalities are more geared towards working with people. That happens to typically be the people that are on this call. You would think to yourself as well, the people who are most interested in like things are going to be mechanics, engineers, manufacturers, laborers. Like that's cool, no problem.
Yeah.
Um, and so you have to really understand what it is that you value in a job, where it is you want to go, and your personality a little bit. Because if those don't align, you're going to have a hard time. You're going to be fighting yourself a lot.
It's
And
crazy
this
because
business is already challenging enough as it is. You don't want to be fighting yourself on top of clients and carriers.
right. I remember my dad telling me all the time when I was younger, find something that you love and then you'll never work a day in your life. And we've heard that same advice, reverberated for years through different influencers and people of that nature, but it's hard because it's still taking a chance, right? So, it might not make the money that you want right away. So a lot of people kind of avoid it and end up in jobs just to pay the bills, and then life catches up to you, and then you have kids and a house, and now you feel like you have no choice but to, right?
Right.
Um, and that's, the trap that, people talk about. But yeah, I think it's great to hear that you love what you do, um, and that you want
It doesn't mean I
everybody to
love
love it.
all parts of it
Yeah,
and I love
that's
it
true.
all the
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
because I certainly don't. And that's very, very true. And it's some, again, like, it makes you question some parts, right? Like, I'll share with you guys this. I had a client, um, he's had his policy 9 months, like, really hard time getting him approved.
Mhm.
Got him approved standard with F&G, despite him being in jail for a felony for 25 years.
Yeah.
And then I get a message uh, that he's considering replacing his policy, and I'm like, what? And like, this guy's a great client, and I'm like, what are you doing, buddy? So I've got to call him up today and talk to him. But it's like, you get stuff all the time, and the only way
Yeah.
to stay ahead of it is to outwork.
Yeah. It's kind of funny you say that too, because you're like, you're gonna cancel after not even the full 9 months yet. I might get this full charge back after I helped you barely
Well,
scrape by and get through.
yeah, I think it's 9 month.
Yeah.
Well, actually, just passed because they started February 14th,
Yeah.
15th. So it just passed, but it's like you haven't even gotten your first year annual interest credit.
Right.
Like,
Not even that, just for the client's sake. Some clients are not smart. They cancel what they have
yeah,
before getting approved into something else, and even that something else might not be better for them, but
right,
they don't remember how hard
right,
it was for you to get them into a policy in the first place, and
right,
now they end up with nothing, right?
right, right, right.
Yeah, that's I think why it's so important to stay in service of your clients, understanding their needs and making sure that you're meeting them. um, but yeah, and that's continuous. A lot of people think after the sale it's done. It's not done. That's your client. And if you want to
Yeah,
keep them for life, then you got to check on them. That's what those yearly reviews are for. And people just don't do it. And it baffles me. Like, why?
yeah, truly.
Hmm. Right? That's your renewals every year that you don't really have to work hard on.
That's right.
All right, so let's say where you're at now. What's three lessons that you wish you would have known, or tricks, or something you would do different about your day that you would have told yourself as a brand new agent? If you can go back and talk to yourself as a brand new agent, what's three things that you would change right away?
About my schedule, my routine, and my day.
Anything, anything. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be just about that.
I think the first thing would be push myself to invest a little bit more in my business
Elaborate.
because, well, my very first year, I don't know, probably about 130 families, but then I doubled that my second year by basically just investing, right?
Mhm.
Um, and so what you find, and this actually tends to scale pretty well, is that your net earnings at the end of the year is roughly going to be half of what you've issued, right? After all is said and done, roughly, again, everybody else,
Say that again. Say that again so it makes sense
your
to
net earnings, right, which is how much did I make after all is said and done, all expenses, is roughly going to be half of what you issue. So if you issue, 200,000 in annual premium, your net earnings after all is said and done is probably going to be 100. And that actually scales up pretty nicely. And that's even true for like large agency owners I've spoken to, where it's like, okay, yeah, like our agency did, or personal production, right? Like I talked to another Hall of Fame producer who's like, yeah, I wrote like 430. My net was like 210. I'm like, okay, it's like that's not bad, right?
Yeah.
Um, so it's a matter of I think realizing that and scaling appropriately. And emphasis on appropriately, right? Like not too aggressively, not too slowly, because you don't want to take on too much risk or be lazy, right? So that's number one. I think number two would be a little bit more strict on my non-negotiables because there were definitely some times where I let those slide. Absolutely, we all have, right?
What's your current non-negotiables before going to part three?
Yeah. Well, my current non-negotiable is trying to get a sale a day.
That's the only one you have?
At this point, yes.
And if you're a
Um,
brand new agent, what would your non-negotiables be if you talk to yourself as a brand new agent?
get started by 8:30 to 9 a.m. every single day and work till 6:30 to 8 every single day, making as many calls as you can, calling the carriers, learning as much as you can, being on every single training like it's essential. You know, I think in terms of a production goal, a sale a day is not bad, but there's more wrapped into it than just that number when you're a new agent, right? Um, and so, third thing, um, the third thing's a little bit more complex, but I'm going to try to keep it simple enough by saying make sure I'm checking the quality of business from the people that I hire. Because when you build a team, it's not just your business anymore, it's other people's business, and that needs to be closely monitored. Because there are, like, if once you build a big enough team, you will get some things that happen that, are not compliant. And I'm just going to leave it at that. And making sure that you really protect yourself legally and you examine the business that comes in your agency every day, every single day. And if anything looks fishy, um, then you address that right away. But I would leave it at that.
Let's dive a little bit more into it so people
Okay.
understand, because I think it's a little bit too obscure. Let's say, what is it that you do every day to check all the book of business? What is it that you're looking for?
Yeah,
What's something that would be a red flag?
for sure. So that means I'm going to go to my Americo portal. I'm going to go to Mutual of Omaha. I'm going to go to AmAm. I'm going to go to Foresters, Transamerica. I'm going to check all my portals every day,
Got it.
Monday through Friday, not the weekends because they don't always update. And I'm going to look at the business that my agents submit. Okay. And I'm going to make sure that, for example, if it's an Alaska application, the address is a real address. It's a real phone number. I could actually type in the person's name on Google and I could kind of verify some of the information. Okay. In other words, I'm looking for consistent real applications from real humans, right? Something that would be a red flag, for example, is if I saw five Americal policies that were all maxed out at 40,000, all for like 79 and 80. I couldn't locate any of their real addresses or phone numbers, and they didn't match in the applications. That'd be weird. Um, or if there are just, you call a phone number and it's disconnected, or it says the text now subscriber is no longer in service, or the Google Voice. Like those are things where it's like, okay, are these real phone numbers or not? So I would definitely encourage, anybody who's seriously thinking about building to run quality of business checks daily and just take a random sample every single day and just call the applications that get submitted under your hierarchy. Just say, hey, this quality control call. Wanted to see how Paul was doing. He's a relatively new agent. I'm a manager here. How was your experience with him? Cool. Takes 2 seconds to verify everything's good. And you're going to get to a point where you don't have to do that for certain agents because they're going to prove themselves. And you will also get to a point where you will catch certain things. So that's what I can say about that. It's extraordinarily important. And having a good team that also you can trust around you will help to alleviate some of that pressure off yourself in the future. But before that point, you have to check all of this.
100%. And
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 the
I
carrier,
think just And just to like elaborate, guys, what happens is if you get somebody who's not writing good business, then and that debt rolls up to you, then it's on you to pay it, or you could lose your contracts with the company. Now, once the other person below you pays it back, the company will then reimburse you the money, but the company is going to get their money no matter what, no matter how high it rolls up, right?
Correct.
And so, if you're not careful, it could put you out of business as well because you might not have enough to pay them off, right? In order to keep your contracts to keep selling. And so it
Correct.
does happen in life insurance. And I think it's important that you do look after your book of business, right? And this isn't just to scare you guys. This is just to trust but verify, right? It's
Correct.
being a good steward of your business, right? And you should be teaching your agents as they grow how to do this as well, right?
Correct.
Um, it's
Those
important.
would be
It's
my
just
three
important.
things.
Yeah. Um, any questions for Micah? Go ahead and put them in the chat while we continue this because we're getting down to time here. But if you have any questions, throw it in chat for him. Um, One of the things I kind of wanted to touch on in regards to that is uh, do you kind of keep an eye on your renewals and how do you project? This is the one thing I love about this business. It's very easy to project what next year could look like and how to scale, right? So how do you kind of keep track of numbers and how do you project what you're going to scale for the next year? Do you set goals? Like, what does that look like for you?
It comes down to profit and loss for the business, right?
Mm,
It comes down to tracking every expense for the year and seeing, okay, I spent X here, I spent Y here.
mm,
It was, you know, this was profitable, this was not profitable, and maximizing that profitability, right? So if I spend, $1,000 on Bob's Facebook leads and I write one policy and then it charges back, but then I spend $1,000 on Paul's Facebook leads and I write five policies and they all stick. That's something to think about and ask yourself, okay, well, what was a more profitable outcome? And then do
right.
more of it, and then do less of the stuff that doesn't make you money. And it's really simple. And I know it doesn't sound like it sometimes because it's like, well, how do I keep track of how much I profited? It's like, put it in a spreadsheet, track your cost per acquisition, track how much you spent, track how much you made. Like it's not
That,
hard.
yeah, dive in for acquisition. Like explain that and how to get those numbers.
For sure. So when you say cost per acquisition, an acquisition is when you get a client, right? And the client stays on the books. In other words, it's not a chargeback. So if you have, one policy that pays you, $6,000, right, 500 a month, and that came from a lead pack of 100 leads, and each lead was whatever, $10. That's $1,000 for the lead pack. The policy was 6,000. That's a return on investment of 6 times, right?
Mm,
Your cost to get that one client, for and assuming you made no other sales, right?
mm.
Um, for that entire lead pack, if that was your only deal, was $1,000, right? But again, that would be a very and actually a surprisingly low conversion ratio of 1%, right? Most of the time when we're working leads, depending on the lead source, it's usually like 3 to 5% or 3 to 10, depending on the lead. So you really should see that cost lower, around 500, 400, 300, 200, right? The less you can spend and the more you can acquire a client, the better you'll do. And that's where referrals and book of business and other things come in. But yes, so it's the amount of paid funds you have to allocate to secure a deal that stays on the books.
And just so you guys know, when those of you as you're brand new and you start looking at vendors to buy leads and things like that, the industry standard is about 5%. All of the vendors will tell you about the same, about 5% return. So it's kind of a good number to kind of set in your head, right? Sometimes it'll be better, sometimes it'll be little bit less, but the average is about 5%.
Right. And to specify, that's 5% conversion ratio on leads received, right?
Right.
It also happens to be true that if you're putting in the work and you have decent skill set, and you know what you're talking about, and you ask your questions,
You're
your
getting higher.
ROI per dollar spent should be 3 to 5.
Mm.
Because it's about 5% of leads that come in that will convert, but the dollars that result into
It's
your
different.
account as a
Yeah.
result of what you spend should be 3 to 5 times greater because of the advance in expenses.
Yeah, exactly. So 5% is the return of leads basically responding to you, and the 3 to 5 is how much you're really making off. Perfect. Um, Now, kind of just articulating what I meant by 5% could be higher than 5% based off your skill set is if you're not just relying on CRM, you're doing everything. You're dialing the leads that never answered. You're putting in that hard work. Your rate of return is going to be higher than the average. Yep. Perfect, man. Well, if you could leave everybody here a piece of advice to kind of move forward with the rest of this week, because a lot of people think December is not a good month. To me, it's always one of my favorite. November, December is like where I make the bulk of my money. So, for those who are kind of feeling the winter blues or not sure how December is going to go, what's some advice that you'd give everybody?
Tell yourself a better story than, oh, people aren't interested in life insurance in December, like literally.
Yeah,
Um, Realize that this is a lot of time where families are coming together, communities are coming together, um, and people still buy life insurance. Still, people still need it. I actually am curious here. Um,
look at stats.
which months do people buy most life insurance?
That'd be interesting. What I've always noticed is my numbers go up, and I attribute to is more heart attacks and strokes happen in the holidays than any other time of the year. So more people are seeing and hearing about death. And I think that's the reason why more people buy in the months that you think they would buy less, since a lot of their money's being allocated towards Christmas and Thanksgiving and all that. What's it
So I
say?
just came across a little article here that says why December is the best time to buy life insurance. So you can even buy it as a gift for somebody,
Yeah,
right? Like especially if you're getting it for whatever, your parents or spouse or whatever, right? Like people have their families on their mind, hopefully a little bit more than
yeah,
average, and it provides peace of mind, and it's great for your winter travel plans, you know. So there
for
are lots
sure.
of reasons, and I think that it's important to, again, don't make excuses for yourself because winners are going to find a way to win,
Yeah.
and
My,
people who are not are going to find an excuse, and that's okay. But
yeah.
figure out what you belong in.
Perfect, man. Well, hey, thanks, Micah. I really appreciate you coming on, man.
Got
I
it,
really
Paul.
appreciate you. And if you can, stick around an extra little 5 minutes here so people can ask questions if they have any. But other than that, we'll see you guys, hey, next week.